Hi and welcome to the webinar today, which is the first session of Month of Marketing. So thanks to everyone for coming along. We'll get started in just a second. But today we're going to be looking at who's your ideal prospect, and this is the first session in the Stream 90-day marketing plan, which I'll explain a little bit more about later. Just before we get kicked off, a bit of housekeeping. So if you have any problems, technical issues, that kind of thing, if you could use the chat window, that would be great. And if you have any questions for me, I'm going to stick around at the end and have a Q&A session. So use the questions window for that. And you know, I'll probably not get to them in the webinar, but afterwards we'll stick around for as long as you've got questions and answer those. We'll be recording today's webinar and sending that out to you afterwards. And also, if you want the handouts, they're in the admin window there to download. So there's the slides, and there's also the workbook, which we're going to be running through in this session and the following 3 sessions. So let's get into it. So yeah, I'd like to welcome you along to Month of Marketing 2017. This is the second time we've run Month of Marketing, and it's brought to you by Bizink and Revolutionary Firm. And this September we've got 13 great events for you. We've got 10 workshops, this being the first one, and 3 Q&A sessions. And we've got some really great guests, including Trent McLaren of Practice Ignition, David Costello of Jetpack Workflow, and Danielle Fanger of Spotlight Reporting. So to see all the events, you can see on the Month of Marketing website, which is monthofmarketing.com. You can check out the schedule page on there. We'll also be sending out reminders a day and an hour before each event. And like I mentioned, if you can't make any of the events, we will be sending out a recording, and we'll email that out to you. Okay, so we'll get into the content right now, and I'll just give you a bit of background to myself. So my name's Matt Wilkinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Bizink, and I've been working for over 15. I'm going to have to change that
Matt,
to nearly. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you mind just sharing a screen for us?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies for that, guys. It was shown before, and now it switched itself on. That's all good. Okay, cool. So yeah, I've been working in online business for almost 20 years now, so I'm gonna have to adjust that. But yeah, I've been working exclusively with accountants and bookkeepers since 2010. And Bizink, the company that I manage, is we help busy accountants and bookkeepers grow using online marketing, and we're working with firms across the English-speaking world: US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Okay, so enough about me. Into the content today. So this is part 1 of the Stream 90-day marketing plan. And there are going to be 4 sessions in which we're going to be creating a real practical marketing plan that you can use to start growing your firm. And it's very similar to what we do with our own marketing, and it's a system that we've tried and tested on accounting and bookkeeping firms across the globe. And it's a really fast way of planning your marketing. You don't need any special skills to do it, and it's going to be hopefully give you a template that you can use again and again for planning your marketing campaigns. And the reason I chose this topic for the stream was this statistic. So earlier this year, we did a survey of over 400 bookkeeping and accounting firms, and found that 68% of you don't have a marketing plan, which kind of really blew me away. It's such an important part of the business plan in general. So I think there's a real need there to get a marketing plan put together. So I'm going to guess that not having time to do marketing, maybe not having marketing skills, just from what I know from working with you guys over the years, would be some of those big issues. And so we're just going to give you this simple system for putting together a marketing plan, because I know you'll all value planning. I'm sure you tell your clients to do it. So let's get into creating a plan, because the truth is, if you don't know where you want to go, how are you going to get there? We need a plan. And I don't want this to be some sort of long-winded Word document that gets written and never looked at again, put in a drawer. At the end of the stream, it's only going to be 3 or 4 pages long, and it's something that you can keep going back to and easily adjusting. Because look, the reality is, if we work out what our goals are and what the actions are to hit them, we've just got to do them, every day, every week, every month, and then it becomes impossible not to hit those goals. It's just about having a plan and putting it into action. So let's get into it. So the first thing that I'd say is, like, what's the definition of marketing? It's a lot less complicated than often gets made out. It boils down to 3 things to me. Number 1, you need to know who your customers are. Number 2, you need to know where they are. And then once you know that thing, you just need to go and talk to them. Now, I often see firms getting caught up in lots of things that don't really matter, or just aren't crucial to their marketing. They get obsessed over their brand and their logo. Your brand's important, but it's not the be-all and end-all. That they're obsessing over the marketing tactics, whether they should use social media or search engines or newspaper ads. All of those things can work, but none of them are going to actually work unless you fundamentally know, who you're trying to sell to, where they are, and what messaging you should be using to get in front of them. In other words, having a really clear focus on a customer type, and going after them. So what I'm not talking about here is niching your firm. I'm not saying you need to do that, but to make successful marketing campaigns, you've got to narrow your focus, because the reality is, if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. The broader you try and make it your marketing, the weaker it appeals. And the flip side of that is that the more focused and specific your marketing is, the more strongly it will appeal. So like I said, that doesn't mean necessarily just focusing on a certain industry. It could mean that. It could mean focusing on a certain skill or service you offer. You could focus on businesses with inventory, for example, and that doesn't have to be an industry. That can cross several industries. And it doesn't mean you have to, reject legacy, what we call like legacy clients, or general business clients. You could still attract those from your normal referral kind of networks and all of that. But just to do successful marketing, focus is the key. Because, the more specialized service you offer, not just in terms of marketing appeal, you can charge higher fees, you can often do more interesting work, and those kind of clients are more sticky. If you're doing something very specialized for them, they tend to be more sticky than just a general business client. Now, that often isn't the case when we talk to firms. I'm going to give you an example of a firm that we chatted to in Australia. We asked them these questions. So, who are the customers you're trying to target? They told us they're trying to target businesses from startups to $50 million public companies, which is pretty much most of the businesses in Australia, right? They're just a huge variety of businesses in that kind of band there. So where are those businesses? Well, they're absolutely everywhere. How can we possibly start trying to market to these people where they could be just absolutely everywhere? Even a big 4 firm with a huge marketing budget, how could they market to all those kind of businesses? So how do we go and talk to them? They wouldn't even know where to start. So what we need to do is bring focus to that. And narrow it down much smaller than that. And the analogy that I would use here is, it's like fishing, right? So if you're a fishing expert, you don't go out like this kid on the jetty here with like a stick and a bit of bacon fat as bait. The only way he's going to catch a fish is with luck. So, if you're a serious fishing person, you go and like decide a type of fish that you're going to target. Now, I live near a famous trout fishing river, so we'll use that as the example. There's some pretty serious people around here. So the first thing they work out is, what kind of lure or fly are they going to use? And there's books and books written about that kind of stuff. But they don't just go out with any kind of old thing on the end of their line. They get really specialized. And then the next thing is that they're going to work out what are the places where they're going to go and find those fish. It's not just off a jetty. It's going to be some specific places on the river, in the lake. They're going to really think about that. And they're also going to think about, are there going to be other people there? Are there going to be other anglers there competing for the same fish? Because if there are, then, better to find another spot, right? And also timing is important. Time of year, what time of day it is, when are the fish going to be hungry, when are they going to be feeding? We need to take all those things into account. So, the people who catch lots of trout, and I've had a go and didn't do very well, they take into account all of those things. They target the one fish and do all that specialized stuff. What they don't do is just trawl around with a huge net, catching all kinds of other fish in the hope that they catch that one big trout. And that's, you need to be like that trout fisherman to make your marketing work. You've got to work out, first of all, who are you going to target? Don't just try and target everybody. You work out who's the best, the ideal prospect, which is what we're going to move on to today. Who are you going to target? You don't just trawl around hoping, getting any kind of client on board, hoping that some of them are going to be a good fit. Because once you know who you're targeting, then you can start to work out, what's the right bait, what's the right lure for that type of person. Because, if you're targeting everybody, well, they're all attracted by different things. But if we get really specific, we can find something that's really going to hook those people in. And then you can also start to work out where are those people that we want to target. As soon as you know who they are, you can work out where they hang out. Where's their business, where do they hang out online. That stuff starts becoming a lot clearer. And and then at what times, when's going to be the right times to target them. It all starts to unfold. And because all of that stuff, we can work that out and make a plan around it, it becomes repeatable. Unlike just targeting everybody, which is just kind of like hitting and hoping. Sometimes we have a good month, sometimes we have a bad month. We create a system like this, and it becomes repeatable. So let's get into it. If you haven't already, the workbook is in the control panel. You can download that, and we're going to be going through that workbook, the first part of that workbook today, which is the section on your ideal prospect. So let's dive into that now. So the first box is, who would you like to work with? Who do you like working with? Sorry. And what we're trying to work out here is to go, okay, if we're going to focus on a certain type of prospect, let's get somebody that we're going to enjoy working with a few provisos, right? You also want them to be someone who it's worth building a business model around. They need to pay you. They need to, be receptive to what you want to do. You might want to work with, I don't know, like, record companies or bands or something like that. But are they going to be super reliable clients to build a business around? Maybe not. But business should be fun. So we want to be working with more of the type of clients you really enjoy. And so maybe look back at past and current clients who you've really enjoyed working with and who've enjoyed working with you, and you could put those in this list. Why you like working with them, you might include that information, because that could be helpful later on. And so at this point you might think, okay, well, I can't narrow this down to one type of prospect. What I would do then is duplicate that workbook and maybe run through it with different types of prospects. So we were doing this with one of our clients recently, and she targets cafes and restaurants, hairdressing salons, and campgrounds. Three kind of like different, very niche markets, and we ran through those. And the one that came out as the kind of ideal prospect was the cafe owners and restaurants. So she might go back to the other ones, but keeping the focus, wanted to just focus on one at a time. And I'd say that's something we might talk about later is, we don't want to have 10 ideal prospects, because by definition that's, they can't all be ideal. Better to focus on one and really nail that market, and then maybe move on to another one. So I'm going to use a real example here. I had considered using the example of like an accounting or bookkeeping firm, but I thought that I think that kind of can cloud the thinking. I want you to think about what works best for you. So the example I'm going to use, because we use this system ourselves, I'm going to use the example of what we did at Bizink when we were starting up, kind of back in 2012. So back then, these were the things that we put into that kind of who we'd like to work with box. So it was accountants in Australia and New Zealand, kind of firms that we want to work with had a business advisory focus. The compliance type firms tended to not be, or still don't tend to be, a great fit for us because the type of content and services we offer. Early tech adopters could be a really good target for us because they were more receptive to modern marketing methods. We also wanted to, working with professionals, certainly, compared to some other markets, there's a high standard of ethics, and generally, accounting firms have solid businesses, which means, getting paid, because I'm sure some of you worked with clients who are less good at that kind of side of things. And also, I had past experience and kind of understood this market, so that all made sense for us. Now, you notice that, like, we work with bookkeepers a lot now. We didn't at first, and that's something that in the last year we've really focused on. And so when we began to work with a lot more bookkeepers, we ran through this process again, because although there are a lot of similarities, there are also a lot of differences, and that will come out maybe, in the next few boxes that we go through, why understanding those differences is really important. But I just reiterate here is like not to start off with like 10 different things and go, okay, we'll go after all of these because 10 is better than one. That doesn't work. You're splitting your effort. You're better to focus on one to start off with, I would say. So once you've worked out, who you want to work with, we need to start thinking about that prospect. We need to think about what makes them tick. And the first thing and the most important thing, which is essential in your marketing plan, is understanding their pain points. Now, the first thing is to understand what a pain point is, and I know you all understand that, but just to kind of reiterate this, often when we're talking with accountants and bookkeepers, say, what are the business's pain points? They would say something like cash flow planning, which would be a really common issue for businesses, but that's not their pain point, right? And let me explain that. For the business, their pain point is they're not getting paid on time, they can't pay bills, they can't pay their staff, sometimes themselves, and that keeps them awake at night and stressed. They're the pain points, emotional stress, kind of things that keep people awake at night. Now, cash flow planning is the solution. It's not the pain point. So we'll come on to the solutions in a minute, but in this box, what we're trying to really write down is, emotional stuff, because, marketing that appeals to emotions is always more effective than kind of appeals to reason and rationality. It seems daft that people, would not make rational decisions in business, but, often, I would say most of the time, people are led by their heart as much as they're led by their head. So the appeal to emotion is always really strong, and so keep this. You're not at this point. We're not thinking about how we necessarily solve these pain points, because maybe you haven't got a solution for some of them, and that's an opportunity. We're just thinking about what keeps that prospect awake at night. So what was it for us? Back when we started, and still largely the same now. So the big pain point for firms we were talking to was they just didn't have a reliable method for getting new leads and growing their business. They were relying on referrals, that kind of thing. They knew they should be doing marketing, but didn't either have the time or skills or both to do marketing. It was a big pain point. Often would say we're numbers people and don't like writing. I talked to a bookkeeper this morning who used that exact phrase, in fact. And then one of those was, another thing was like they felt like their current website didn't look that good and gave a poor impression. And certainly back 5 years ago, a lot of accounting firms had like really bad websites. I'd say that's improved since then, but that was a big thing then. Now, a couple of things to note here. One is that pain points can be real or perceived. So the first pain point is a very real thing, right? If you're not getting any leads into your business, it's probably an issue. Could be a terminal issue. Your website giving a poor impression, or you feeling that could be a highly subjective thing, but nonetheless, it could still be a really powerful pain point to market on. So think about that from your client, your prospect's point of view. There's things that they need, and there's things that they want, and both of those things are worth appealing to in your marketing. There's entire industries like, let's say the beauty industry, for example, springs to mind, which consists largely of stuff that people don't need that stuff. It's a perceived pain point rather than a real one, but billions of dollars industry. So like our slogan, for example, we help busy accountants and bookkeepers grow using online marketing. That very deliberately speaks to those pain points, and that's something we'll be working on in the next session, is how we turn all of this stuff that we work on today into messaging that really appeals and talks to your prospects' pain points. So the next thing is, once we understand those pain points, and I'd really suggest spending a long time on that, talk to your staff, talk to clients who are in that prospect group, really try and work that out, and keep going back to that, because that's the most powerful thing you can do, is talk to those pain points. But obviously, in terms of what you're going to do, you have to work out how you're going to solve those pain points. There's no point understanding them if you don't have a solution for them. So this is where we're going to list out how you how you solve those, essentially the services that you have that meet those pain points. The examples that we had, look, we would create high converting websites, we'd write the content, and marketing and productivity tools, and offer education. So starting from the bottom, if people are on market was lacking marketing skills, we wanted to educate them. Things like we're doing today, free education, content marketing like that. The time issue is always a big thing, I know, for accountants and bookkeepers in terms of marketing. So productivity tools, and us creating content, all big things. And obviously the websites, that was one of the main things that we did. The thing with this stuff is this can change over time, right? This is where your plan needs to be a living document. You might add new services in. For example, we thought that at the start that we would just create content and marketing tools, give that to accountants, and they would do the marketing. And we actually realized that wasn't enough. Some firms still didn't have the time to do the marketing, so we hadn't fully solved that pain point. So we actually do market. We actually can handle all of the marketing now for a lot of the firms that we work with. And so you'll as you're kind of working with more of these kind of ideal prospects, you'll learn things about them, and develop your service offering, and then that will drive back into your messaging and help you get more of those type of clients. So this part, I would try and make this. I've been pretty brief because I've got a limited kind of space here, and I don't want to kind of go on about what we do. But on this part of the workbook, I would spend a bit of time and make this list as long as you can, because in sales and marketing, you never want to miss the chance to put a benefit in front of a prospect, because you never know what is the thing that will hook someone in. I've done a sales demo before and done all of our kind of big features and benefits that are normally the things that, wow people. And it's some like weird little thing that we've talked about at the end that was the hook for them. So you never know what that's going to be. Make sure you list out all the ways that you can help a prospect, and try and communicate that when we get to the messaging part. So the final box that we come to is, how are you different? It's all well and good picking an ideal prospect, understanding their pain points and solving them. That's great, but then if every other firm in the area is doing the same thing, it's not going to really be a great thing to market on. So, we need to work out ways that you can stand out, and that doesn't mean you have to find a totally unique market segment, but you've got to find a unique approach. So there's different ways to be different. The first one would be to pick a type of prospect that nobody else has targeted, in a focused way. That's obviously completely different. That might not be the case. That might be very hard to do. It might not, just be suitable in the area you're in. So maybe you could, have a unique service, a new service. Perhaps you've got like a special service for a system for business planning, and that's what you could bring to the market. Or if you find it really hard to actually find something completely unique, you could actually have a different marketing approach. So go into the same market that other people are in, but just have a very different approach. You could do free events if nobody else is doing that, or just have something quite novel. But to kind of give a real world example, the difference that we had, my business partners got a small business content company that's been going for like 20 years. They've written for like Bank of America, Sage, Microsoft. So very experienced in creating small business content. None of the other kind of suppliers that we were competing against had that kind of depth. The incumbent suppliers, I think, and we were coming into a market in Australia and New Zealand where the incumbents were quite quite established and probably resting on the laurels a little bit, offering very sort of like what I would call brochureware, very standard websites, very little interesting content on them, very sort of outdated marketing tools. So we're kind of lucky there that you can stand out if you're in a market where the incumbent is not really doing a great job. And I was bringing to it a lot of experience of online marketing. So they were some of the ways we could communicate a point of difference in that market. And over time, we've tweaked that message, and other people come in and compete with you. So, they look at what you're doing and improve their things. And so you can never rest on your laurels with it, but have a point of difference, or more than one if you can, because that's really, by definition, going to help you stand out. So like I say, take that workbook, have a look through there, and try and fill out those boxes, because next week what we're going to be doing is tying that together to create a USP, a unique selling point, sometimes called a point of difference, an unfair advantage. But what we're going to do is kind of take all of that information and distill it down into a way that is going to help you communicate what you do, what's different about what you do, really powerfully to that ideal prospect. And so hopefully you can see that, with focused marketing like this, yes, you have a smaller audience, but the appeal is much, much stronger than if you were just marketing to everybody. And I know some of you will be thinking, well, are we not really limiting ourselves by just going after, one type of prospect? Well, first of all, I would say, is your current marketing where you're doing this very general stuff working? If it is, all good, but what I see day to day, week to week, working with accountants and bookkeepers around the globe, general marketing just doesn't pull in a huge amount of leads, whereas people who focus, that not only do they pull in enough leads, they also have a repeatable system that they can keep using again and again. And I'd use the example of Bizink. We only work with accountants and bookkeepers. Sometimes people say, why don't you work with lawyers or financial planners or whatever? There's lots of different niches that we could aim at. But if you just look at the numbers, in English-speaking countries, my estimate is there's probably 150,000 accounting firms. If you add in bookkeepers, that number more than doubles. But if we just said 150,000, 0.1% of that market, which is pretty achievable, I think, is 150 clients, which is not huge, but it's certainly a viable business. You can also, you don't just sell one thing to a client. You can obviously sell multiple things to them. In the context of an accounting and bookkeeping firm, we're not saying you can't have your normal clients that you get through referrals or who just find you through local networks. So, even taking a very narrow focus on an industry, you only need a small share of that to make a viable business. So in other words, focus, it doesn't have to mean small. So to sum up today, the first part of the workbook, if you're marketing to everybody, really you're marketing to nobody. You've got to have some focus. And you need to decide, who do you want to work with? Who is your ideal prospect? What are their pain points? Really, really important to understand in any market. What keeps your prospects awake at night, because if you can talk to their emotions like that, it's really powerful. And obviously you've got to be able to solve those pain points and be different, to stand out. So hopefully you have some time to fill in that workbook before the next session, which is a week on Monday. So that's where we're going to be looking at the USP or your point of difference. But before then, we've also got some great sessions coming up in Month of Marketing. The next one, which is on screen there, you can see the times and dates in different time zones, is called Picking Low-Hanging Fruit, and it's about selling advisory services to your existing clients. And that's Danelle from Spotlight Reporting. We did a similar session to this earlier in the year, which is really, really popular. She's a great presenter, and that's going to be an awesome session. So hopefully we'll see you along at that. I'm going to stick around now and answer your questions. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming along today and taking part in Month of Marketing. Like I say, you can find out details of all the events on the website, which is monthofmarketing.com, where you can also, if you go to the prizes section, there's an opportunity to, there's a load of freebies on there, an opportunity to win a website, a year's worth of blogs, some coaching from Revolutionary Firm, who are also one of the sponsors of Month of Marketing, so check that out. And I've also got the link to Bizink's marketing support Facebook group, So you can see the link on there. If you're an accountant or a bookkeeper, go there, and there's we've got a whole bunch of people in there who will give you support on any marketing questions that you've got. So hopefully Anthony's on the line, and we've got a few questions.
Yeah, I got a few questions here, Matt, if you're ready.
Yeah, cool.
So we have one from Rosalind. She's asking, how can you find out the pain points if you're going to a target market that you don't have a lot of clients in?
Yeah, it makes it a little bit harder. I think that there's different things you can do. So first of all, you can start off with like desk-based research. Obviously Google is a really powerful tool. Certain industries might have good statistical data with them or reports that you might be able to buy. So yeah, look for that kind of information, but nothing can beat getting out of the office and talking to people. So just go and talk to people. Most people are more than willing to do that. It's surprising how generous people will be with their time. I mean, one thing you could do, and I've seen this used well, is create a survey. So you could send that out to whatever that kind of industry is in your local area, and not only will that get you some of that information that you're looking for, that's a way of you already marketing yourself and getting in front of people. So people who answer that, they're all potential leads as well. So yeah, there'd be some of the things I'd look at. Yeah, desk-based research, just get out the office and talk to people. It's sometimes a bit scary to do that, but that will work, and maybe get a survey out there. There's free tools like SurveyMonkey, which you can create an online survey really easily and just get it out there.
Cool. So we also got another one from Eleanor. She says, when you have an ideal prospect, do you then wait for them to come to you after marketing to them?
I mean, the people just don't tend to come to you, unfortunately. There's what's the analogy I always use? It's like it's not like Field of Dreams, like build it and they will come. You've got to really get out there and get in front of people. So that's going to be what we get to in the last two parts of this stream. So what we're going to be talking about, not next week's session, the one after that, is going to be prospect map. So that's where we go, okay, we understand who the ideal prospect is. Now, let's work out where they hang out. So, is that physical places, like, using the example of the client I was talking about earlier, cafe and restaurant owners? That's real easy to find out where they are because, they're on the high street or whatever. But also where they hang out online. So are there like Facebook groups that they're in? Do they use Instagram, or, can we get to them through email? I was talking to a guy who's got a really successful business similar to Bizink. He uses direct mail to dentists. That's his marketing. So, a lot of people have direct mail is dead. That's what he uses. So with that prospect map, you've got to work out how to get in front of people, and then you've just got to go and do it. But I think waiting for people to come to you, no, you've really got to go out there and force the issue, make a bit of noise. That's the way to go with it.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a couple more questions, but if anybody else has any, just pop them into the questions box in the control panel and we'll get to them now. But I got one more. How important is it to have a beautiful website before starting to market? She mentioned that they're in the process of changing, but beginning to think just need to get into it.
Yeah, just get into it. You know what I mean? One thing that I've noticed with accountants and bookkeepers, and this is like a strength and a weakness, is perfectionism. Because I think if you're doing like a balance sheet, right? Like it's got to be perfect. It's all got a balance. But marketing's a bit messy, and especially modern marketing, where you've got like so many different places you can be, and things like social media, communicating there is very imperfect. It's not like you can send out this sort of like controlled message like you used to be able to do with a brochure or whatever. It's kind of messy, and my advice would be just get out there and do it. I think it was Facebook that one of their mottos is good this week is better than perfect next week. I might be paraphrasing there, but you get the idea. It's better to do something now than wait until this idea of perfect, which never hits. Because I've been involved in hundreds and hundreds of website projects, and had several websites of my own. Your website's never done. You'll always be improving it. You'll always be want to change it, and as soon as you've launched it, you'll think, "Oh, I wish we'd done that." Just get into your marketing, and don't worry about too much about things not being perfect.
And I got another question. How often should you review your marketing plan?
I almost every week, certainly every month. So like me and Anthea will often sit down, won't we? Like weekly, look at the plan, tweak it.
Yeah.
Like, what did we do? What did we say we would do? Oh, we didn't do that. Oh, that's okay. We did this instead. So it's a living document. What we'll get to in the last session is a really simple template for putting together your 90-day plan, where you can just see it on one page. And that's something that like I say, me and Anthony and the Bizink marketing team will be sitting there and looking at that almost on, well, yeah, pretty much on a daily basis. I'll look at that and think, are we on track? And what do we need to change? If something really hasn't worked, you're not going to keep on doing it. And sometimes opportunities drop in your lap that you just can't afford not to do. So you're going to have to rework your plan. The key is to have some goals and a plan, and be working towards it. If you're working in an unstructured way, you just don't hit your goals.
Yeah, very true. I got another one from Jane. How do you actually go and find your target market and find those prospects?
So I suppose that could be two things. First of all, if you're trying to define who that is, if you haven't thought of who your ideal prospect is, would be the best place I think to look is somewhere you've got experience in the past. So when I started Bizink, I'd been working with accountants and bookkeepers for a couple of years before that, so I had a decent understanding of the market, what we were going to do, rather than just sort of picking one out of thin air. So I'd say like the first place to look would be existing clients, or maybe past clients who you really enjoyed working with. If you've already got a few in a certain area, that's ideal. But it could be it was just one person that you'd worked with, and you really enjoyed it. They really enjoyed it, and you think, okay, I would love to have more of that type of business. So I hope that could be one interpretation of that question. Or in terms of finding where they are, kind of physically or online. Something we'll cover in the prospect map session, which is the third session in this stream. And I think once you've defined who your ideal prospect is, the power of that is it becomes a lot easier to work out where they are. For example, like if you picked trades businesses, which a lot of accountants and bookkeepers do work with, like trades businesses like builders, a lot of those people will not be on LinkedIn, for example. So don't go there. But they might be on Facebook, or for example, a local firm near me that they target that market, and they put on events where they give away free beer and pies, and they get a lot of tradespeople come to those events. So it's like thinking, okay, where are define who your ideal prospect is, becomes a lot easier to work out where they are.
So I've got a question here from Emma as well. Is it possible
Mhm.
to have two ideal prospects from two different areas, or should you just pick one and focus on that?
It's definitely possible. I would just say that, go back to the pain points for most of um, Bizink's clients, accountants and bookkeepers, are um, time and lacking marketing skills. Um, and if they're the same pain points for you, are you going to be able to do justice to two different ideal prospects, or are you best sticking with one? I would suggest that it's like it's best to stick with one. For us, like I said, people often say, why don't you target lawyers, for example, where you go, okay, what about financial planners? And then before you know it, you're just like a general marketing and website business. So, you're marketing to nobody because you're kind of marketing to everybody. You just don't stick out. So I think, if you have limited time and budget, which I'm going to say, who doesn't? Um, Probably better to start with one because, I suppose implicit in ideal prospect is that's kind of one person or one type of person or kind of industry or sector or whatever. So I think it's better to focus on one and then move on because there's normally more business than you think in a kind of niche than than trying to go at two. I suppose using my fishing example, if you go fishing and put four lines in the water, you're not going to catch any more fish than if you put one. Like it doesn't work. I don't think so. I'm no fishing expert, but I think it's you put one in with the right bait, you putting four in doesn't quadruple your chances.
Do you have any suggestions on how to narrow your focus, how to choose that target market if you're in a regional firm?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think you need to think how many more clients do you actually want? Because workflow and kind of capacity is going to be a challenge for a lot of firms. So you probably don't want 20 new clients. I mean, you're not going to probably get that. Whatever the number is, you might just want one or two clients a month. You might just want one or two clients a quarter. I don't know. So like we're probably not talking big numbers for most of the people on the session here today. So first of all, even if you're in a regional firm and you picked an industry and say that industry was trades businesses, for example, there's still probably way more than enough people to hit your targets. I live in a rural area of New Zealand, um, but there's like a building boom going on. So all it is like white vans driving around and people, builders, electricians, and plumbers. There's absolutely loads of those businesses around, um, even in a small kind of rural area. So I think don't be too worried about focusing small because the numbers you probably need aren't huge.
So this one relates to what you just touched on. Would you recommend choosing a niche based on an industry?
Oh no, it depends. I kind of hate using that example of like trades businesses because that is what like that's a really common one, and not saying it's a bad one. It's just that I don't want to sort of get people's thinking clouded, and that's the reason why I use the example of Bizink rather than trying to come up with some fake accounting or bookkeeping example. Um, an industry can be convenient, because it's kind of self-contained or whatever, but even within an industry, you're going to want to drill down. So if I go back to, so I'll just skip through quickly to the slide I was talking about. Yeah, here. So like we would define our market. It's not just accountants, and bookkeepers. You know, at first it was just accountants. Actually, it was just in Australia, not New Zealand. Um, you know, we then defined that down to having a business advisory focus. So, you know, it wasn't even all types of accounting firms. We didn't want to look at that point even like mid-sized or you know big accounting. I mean, big accounting firms is just probably no, you know, they weren't going to look at us as a startup then anyway. You know, we were looking at early tech adopters. You know, people using at that time, people were still saying, "Oh, cloud accounting, will it take off? Won't it take off?" You know, that question's been answered, but we were often looking for cloud accounting firms. You know, we'd really drill down on a smaller segment even of an industry. So yeah, I think you can have an industry focus, but then even then go really narrow within that. So you know it might be, you know, you don't just go trades businesses, it's plumbers, or you know you could go, you know, solar installation businesses. That you know still loads of those or whatever. Um, so yeah, an industry can be one way to look at it. Another way would be um, like a specialization that you have. So the one I used before is a good example is like inventory-based businesses. And then you could go, okay, then you're looking at e-commerce stores or you know retailers, or it could be yeah, you know, anyone who's got inventory, you could go in and go, okay, well, we specialize in those type of businesses. We understand the kind of cash flow issues you've got. We understand some of the kind of logistical issues you've got. We understand some of the software that needs to sit on top of your accounts. And that becomes that becomes your focus as well. So there's different ways to cut it. You know, I think it comes back to kind of like what's your skills, you know, who have you worked with before, you know, different ways to bring focus to it. But yeah, an industry is a convenient way to do that.
So we have a question from Nicole about the marketing plan. So if you have a specialty in a couple of areas like construction, women's fashion, retail, do you have to have three separate marketing plans, or can you encompass them all those industries in the one plan?
Um, in the end, the plan would encompass them all, but in this part that we've been doing, um, so what we're trying to do over this session and the next two is go. Obviously, we talked about the ideal prospect today, and then what we'll be talking about is your unique selling point to them, and then the prospect map is like where those people are. So for that part of it, I have a separate workbook for each of them, but then we'll pull all those things together into one plan. The 90-day plan is just basically a practical set of actions, obviously to be done over 90 days, and that would have all the activities that you would be doing. And so whether that was across one area or three, yeah, that will all pull into one document in the end.
Cool. And we've got another question from Eric. How do you establish your point of difference in your target market, which you perceive as a crowded space?
Um, that can be challenging. I think there's different ways to do it. I mean, it's hard without specifics, but you know, one approach you could take is what can you, so okay, say it's crowded, what service can you bring that's different to that market? You know, is there something that you can do that other people don't? You know, the example I gave before was like, you know, do you have a system for creating a marketing plan? Like we're talking about now, even, you know, or a business plan that you could bring to the market and say, we do this differently than everyone else. You know, it doesn't have to be a huge difference, but if you can communicate that as a difference, then that can be just as powerful. So that would be the second thing I would say is your marketing approach can be unique. So I'm trying to think of a real world example of this, but you know, I mean, for example, like banks, like all the banks really do the same thing, right? It's the same interest rates. You can get a mortgage off them, you can get a loan off them, you can put your money in the bank. It's all pretty much the same, but they all try and market on, we're the, I don't know, we're the young people's bank, we're the ethical bank, we're the traditional bank. So they have a difference of marketing approach. It's obviously a very crowded marketing place, undifferentiated, but their marketing approach can make them seem different.
If anybody has any more questions, pop them into the question window. I've got one more here though. You mentioned earlier on in the webinar that Bizink can help do marketing for accountants. Where can they find out more about that?
Just go to bizinkonline.com. Two things you can do: either book a website demo if you want to get help with your website, or we've just launched a thing on the site called the Marketing Clinic. So if you click on Marketing and then Marketing Clinic, there's a couple of things you can do in there. So either just ask us a marketing question, whatever it is, and we'll try and answer that for you. Or you can book an appointment with one of our marketing specialists, and that's where we'll what we try and do is just take one marketing problem, 30 minutes, and we'll try and solve that for you. So if you head on over there, bizinkonline.com, click on the Marketing tab, Marketing Clinic, and you can book a slot there with one of the marketing team, and we'll get to grips with your marketing problem, and we can tell you a bit more about some of the services we offer there as well.
Great. Well, that's about all the questions I can see, so I think that's about it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that, Anthea, and thanks to you all for coming along today. Been great having you here. Hope that's been useful, and hope to see you in the next month of marketing session, but definitely the next session of this stream, which is a week on Monday. And what we'll be looking at there is your USP, unique selling point. So we'll pull together everything we've been talking about today into basically a statement which you can take to the market, and will communicate what's different about you and why people should work with you. So some of this stuff might not make sense almost until the end of the stream, but we'll really pull it together at that point, and then the plan will come together. So thanks for coming along today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next session.